Welcome back to Burning Down the House. My name is Bethany, and in today's video, we're going to talk about what it means to go no contact. So I'm going to organize this video into 3 parts: the goal, the facts, and the fallout. Part 1. What is the goal of no contact, and what are some common misconceptions? Part 2. After implementing no contact, learn how to keep the facts straight during the inevitable backlash. Part 3. We'll explore common emotions that result from going no contact and how to stay strong during the fallout. Part 1. The goal. So let's start by defining what no contact is and what it isn't. Going no contact means ceasing all communication with a toxic family member or partner. No face-to-face conversations, text messages, phone calls, or emails. The goal or purpose of no contact is threefold: to protect yourself from further manipulation and abuse, to increase your self-esteem, and to allow you time and space to develop better boundaries and get clear on your values. So how does no contact differ from, say, the silent treatment, the gray rock method, or ghosting? Is no contact the same as the silent treatment? No. The silent treatment is about control. The other person is using silence to manipulate you into feeling guilty for some perceived offense so that you'll grovel for their attention and forgiveness. When the silent treatment becomes habitual or their default response, this is a clear sign that the other person really has no intention of repairing the relationship. The goal of no contact, on the other hand, is self-preservation. You may want things to be different or wish that the other person would work on the relationship. But when you realize that's not possible, you work to protect your own mental and emotional well-being by distancing yourself. Is no contact the same as gray rock? No. Gray rock is a technique that's used in situations where pursuing no contact is not an option. Co-parenting with a narcissistic ex or fending off a toxic coworker. The gray rock method requires you to behave in a way that's emotionally unresponsive so that the other person becomes bored with you and ends up leaving you alone. And while you may choose to severely limit your interactions, gray rock method doesn't qualify as no contact for the mere fact that you have to at least occasionally communicate with the other person. Is no contact the same as ghosting? No. Ghosting is a relatively new term, typically used in the context of dating and friendships. When you ghost someone, it typically means you don't respond to their text messages or return their phone calls. You may even block them or change your contact info. It's a colloquial and derogatory term to describe someone who's deemed spineless for not confronting or warning the other person of their impending silence. Ghosting hurts. I've been ghosted. It happens to everyone at some point. No one appreciates being ignored or considered so inconsequential that the other person wouldn't even give you any closure. And while it's true, as with no contact, that all communication has ceased, I feel like it's really important to consider context when it comes to a really controversial subject like ghosting. For example, if a best friend or longtime confidant suddenly cut you out of their life with zero explanation, that would understandably hurt and leave you feeling very confused. But if that isn't the case, which if we're being honest with ourselves probably isn't the case most of the time, maybe it's that the quality of the relationship simply didn't warrant any justification. Maybe your connection was shallow at best, nothing more than an acquaintance. Maybe you had to block a stranger on social media who's demanding your attention or answers they're not entitled to. So you went on 1 or 2 dates, and the other person doesn't feel obligated to explain why they don't want to go on a third. It could be that an individual chooses to ghost someone who's demonstrating really toxic, even dangerous behaviors, and confronting them would only serve to make matters worse. It's also possible that the person who ghosted you is going through a really serious personal crisis, debilitating depression, divorce, or some kind of health problem, and they simply don't have the emotional or psychological bandwidth to make your feelings a priority right now. Finally, and this is perhaps the most unpopular reason, sometimes friends just grow apart. Life circumstances shift and change, and their silence may have absolutely nothing to do with you. So the fundamental difference between ghosting and no contact is by ghosting, you don't warn the other person of your intention to cease contact, which for all the aforementioned reasons you may have chosen not to. Let me just say this, if you've been ghosted, it's okay to acknowledge your feelings. Being ghosted by someone you cared about really sucks and you don't have to like it. Instead of focusing on what you can't control, focus on what you can and take care of yourself, since doing so will help you to build resilience in the face of future challenges and disappointments. Part 2, the facts. As previously mentioned, the purpose of going no contact isn't about control. Your silence isn't being used to manipulate your family member or partner into submission, nor are you asking them to fundamentally change who they are, their beliefs, values, personal style. You're asking to be treated with dignity and respect. and they're failing to reciprocate this basic courtesy. Instead, when you do cease contact, they will use gaslighting and other forms of emotional blackmail to make you appear unstable or ungrateful. And it's precisely during this initial backlash that you will have to repeatedly remind yourself that your demands are not unreasonable. The following few tips will help you to keep the facts straight in your own head during this time when you're the most vulnerable and likely to second-guess yourself. 1. Save any and all communication from the other person. Emails, text messages, and phone calls. To be clear, your purpose isn't to keep score or to threaten them. Rather, you've been conditioned to doubt your memory and sanity, so having this collection will remind you of how things really played out if they attempt to spin the facts. And 2, use the time apart to see the relationship for what it was, not what you wish it was. Maybe you were taught certain moral platitudes like blood is thicker than water or family comes first, and now you feel guilty for setting boundaries. But here's the reality. The decision to go no contact isn't usually a decision that's made lightly. It goes against a very primitive need to be loved and accepted by our family or desired by the object of our affection. Instead, the fact that you felt the need to go no contact at all should serve as a reminder that your intuition was on point and that you wouldn't be going through the trouble of taking such drastic measures if the situation didn't call for it. AKA, you are not overreacting. Part 3, the fallout. No contact can be an emotionally exhausting, even terrifying process. And that is why it is crucial to practice self-compassion and adjust your expectations about how quickly you'll bounce back. In fact, it's very common to even experience mixed emotions about your decision to distance yourself. Let's consider 3. Suddenly having no communication with a partner or family member you were in close contact with or had a close relationship with, and sustaining no contact for months or even years is traumatic. Even if the other person is still alive, you're grieving the relationship you'll never have. Toxic and narcissistic individuals never accept responsibility for their actions, so you can fully expect them to make you feel guilty for standing up for yourself. And as much as you may want to vent to a friend, keep in mind that not everyone will understand or support your decision. Some individuals simply cannot imagine or comprehend a situation where family members can't work things out, and their unsolicited, albeit well-intentioned, 2 cents may only add to your burden. It's also very common to experience a confusing mix of relief, anger, and sadness. You manage to break free from their manipulation and mind games, and maybe for the first time in your life, you're starting to see things with new, fresh eyes. The next minute, you're furious about how they treated you. And then you have those moments where, you're replaying the highlight reel of your relationship, emphasizing their good qualities while ignoring all the red flags. And this emotional tug of war, if you will, is very common in trauma-bonded relationships, where the narcissistic individual trains you to question your feelings and ignore your instincts. Basically, it's going to suck. Be prepared for character assassination, sibling triangulation, and the possibility of never receiving closure, even if you still love the other person. Going no contact is your last resort to protect your mental and emotional well-being, and ruminating on what could have been will only be counterproductive to your healing process. But you're also only human and you can only handle so much. So if you relapse, maybe in a moment of despair or loneliness, and reach out to them, don't beat yourself up. Acknowledge how you're feeling and don't judge yourself for it. Just go right back to no contact. And if necessary, speak to a qualified therapist who you feel comfortable with. Someone who can help you shoulder the weight of this transition. Offer you some practical self-care tips to get you through. By setting firm boundaries and following through on your no contact rule, you give yourself the opportunity to rediscover who you are and what you stand for. Instead of operating from a place of fear, you learn how to make conscious decisions based on your values, and this puts you in a better position to create healthier connections in the future. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, found it helpful, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for future videos, and I'll see you next time.